Hello, everybody. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. I have a great show today. You know, we love bringing leaders in their particular space on the show. We're very honored and humbled by the fact that so many of these top-notch professional entrepreneurs want to come on the show and not only share their story, but of course their company journey as well. And we've been able to invite a true leader in his particular space on the show. He's got a great team. The name of the company is Fobesoft, and the entrepreneur we have on the show today, he's the CEO and founder of Fobesoft. His name, of course, is Mr. Geordy Murphy. And you watch the show all the time. You know that I love to eat. I love to go to restaurants. As a matter of fact, many years ago, I actually owned a couple of restaurants, small minority portion of a couple of restaurants. And one thing in the restaurant business that's so important, especially these days, is you want to increase your margins. You want to increase your ability to not only provide the beautiful food for your customers, but have a business that is successful. And one thing that we always talk about in business on the show is increasing your margins, doing things that make your business better. And what Geordy and his team at Fobesoft have been able to do is they've become the #1 restaurant management software by doing some very unique things with their software that restaurants can take advantage of. We're going to let Geordy explain it, but we have so many questions. Geordy, welcome to the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I mean, here you are, the #1 restaurant management software. You and your team are doing great work in the restaurant space. You explain it much better than I can, but when I heard about it, it just resonated for me with what you're doing, Geordy. So let's pull the lens back to 30,000 feet. Tell us sort of the high level about Fobesoft, and then we're going to go.
Well, basically, the restaurant business is a rearview mirror business. It operates for a month, and they turn around after a month. They look back and say, did we make money last month? So what we've done at Fobesoft is we figured out a way to give restaurants a daily profit and loss statement every single day, sales through rent, compared to a budget that runs month to date. And it's either red or green. So if it's green, you're doing fine. If it's red, that pop up that give you specific examples on what you can do to lower your labor costs. If your chemicals are out of whack or your linen and laundry, we break it down and organize it for the restaurateur. And then we've seen anywhere from 20 to 40% increases in profits that we can bring restaurants.
Yeah, Geordy, it's so interesting. I mean, you think about it, the rear view mirror, the restaurants, you know, typically, traditionally, they get to the end of the month and then they look back. And to be honest, a lot of restaurateurs, they look back 2, 3, 4 months down the road because they're so busy running the restaurant. They have no dynamic information. And here we are, Fobesoft. You give them the day-to-day look at their restaurant and the way it's working. I mean, it's phenomenal. Let's talk about it. How long has Fobesoft been around, and give us some idea of the breadth of the software and the platform.
Okay, well, I started the business about 6 or 7 years ago. I developed the software with a friend. I financed it myself up to that point. We had a couple hundred restaurants on the platform, and then the pandemic hit. So when the pandemic hit, of course, everybody knows every restaurant in the country closed. So we pretty much had to start over. So a year ago, December, 16 months ago, we had a small angel fund come in and gave us a little bit of operating money. And we, the first year, added 400 plus restaurants. We're up to over 1,000 restaurants now. And we're adding, 60, 80, 100 every month. So it's going very well. When you can, we basically close 40% of the demos that we do because people in the restaurant business, they see it and it's information that they need. And when you can give it to them on a daily basis, it's very impactful. And we use a term, it gives you the opportunity to manage to the bottom line. And when they compare it to a budget every single day, running month to date, you have time to fix any problems during the month to manage to the bottom line to hit your budgeted number. Whereas previously, the way most restaurants operate like I just mentioned, in the rearview mirror. They operate for a month. They turn around. Did we make money? And any issues that might have happened during the month have impacted another week or two into the following month. So
Yeah,
it's a game changer for the industry.
it's a game changer because once they see it and once your team shows them the platform and what it can do for their business, any entrepreneur is going to say to themselves, wow, I can start having a day-to-day look at my business. And I tell you, entrepreneurs throughout the world in every business wish they could have that and wish they could have the same thing that you offer to the restaurants. And of course, I would imagine that restaurants, with the cost of food and the cost of labor, they're looking at their bottom line more closely than they've ever looked at it before. Is that right? And let's talk about how Fobesoft helped with that endeavor.
But what happens is, what we do basically is we help organize the restaurant. And we break it down into 4 different categories. We've got, of course, you've got your sales, but then you've got your cost of goods, you've got your labor, you've got your controllables and your non-controllables. And typically, the common restaurant out there will throw all the other expenses into a one dump-all supply category. And that's where we find a lot of success. Whereas when you can break it out into china, glass, and silver, linen and laundry, repairs and maintenance, kitchen supplies, restaurant supplies, etc., and it's all customizable. So depending on what the client is, the type of restaurant it is, our team customizes their profit loss statement for them, which really helps. And then when you break it down like that, a person can see that they're overspending in certain categories that they really don't need to. Plus, with the well over 1,000 restaurants we have right now, we've got KPIs from across the board on what people should be spending in restaurants. We took a client on 2 weeks ago, very, very well-known chef. She went to culinary school, became a sous chef, became a chef, got into business, but didn't really understand the finances of the restaurant business. It's not her fault. She's a tremendous chef. So once we got her in and organized her, with one little suggestion, we saved her $37,000 a year, which is huge. It's it's totally impactful. It was a point and a half. So it helps people. We basically like to say we organize it. My idea when I started this initially was kind of joking. We want to be the KPMG of restaurants. A place that someone can call and say, here's my information. This is where I am. How can you help me? And my team, our support team, we've got 10 people on our support team. They're all ex-director of operations, all ex-GMs. They totally understand the finances of a restaurant. And we have the type of restaurants, if it's a barbecue restaurant, we've got 20 or 30 of them. We can tell them how they're depending on what state you're in, because sometimes expenses are a little more here or there. And it gives us a lot of information that we can impart onto somebody.
Yeah, I love it so much, Geordy. I would imagine that you mentioned the KPIs, that the more data you receive, the more restaurants that come on board, the more information you're going to have and the more valuable the enterprise becomes, because that's a value in of itself. I mean, a restaurant would be crazy not to sort of join in on the Fobesoft platform just to get the KPIs. Am I right?
Yeah, very much so. And also, we do something that's very interesting for multi-unit. We can line them up left to right, 5, 6, 8, 10, however many restaurants you have. Then they can compare the restaurants and how the different restaurants are operating. Because one GM might be operating, doing great in these categories, where the other one's doing great in these other categories. And once you line it up and you can see across the board, it helps the whole company. We can give it from a 30,000-foot view. You can scroll through different restaurants and see which ones are doing what, all from going into one URL in the morning.
Wow, that's so powerful. And of course, there's a lot of smaller type of pseudo restaurants popping up. There's a lot of like juice bars, and there's a lot of, people selling, healthy bowls. And there's a lot of sort of franchises out there now that are selling this opportunity. Does your system work from the smallest to the biggest? Let's give some idea of what capabilities Fobesoft has with regard to the size of the restaurant, or in this case, what I'm talking about, the juice bars and the healthy bowl type bars.
we can help from 5 to 600,000 and up. So, you know, if the restaurant's doing 5 to 600,000, we can make an impact because there's opportunity in certain different categories. If it gets below that, it's you know, they're basically they have a job and they're operating as best they can. But we have a few that are doing less than $500,000, but typically we like to see $500,000, 600,000 and up.
I love it. Now, I want to talk about your team. Yeah, I love it. I want to talk about your team, Geordy, because you have a great team, and a lot of them are restaurant people and technology people. You've brought together almost this world-class combination of people to work at Fobesoft. How important is the team to the success of what's happening at the company right now?
It's 100% important. It's taken what I developed with Raj, one of my main partners. He worked for Capgemini. I ran IT worldwide for General Motors for 8 years. He did a project for Ford. He did another project. He was working for Starwood when Marriott bought him and was one of the lead architects that married those two technologies together. I mean, that's huge. Matthew, who's my right-hand person, he was a chef. He got out of being a chef. He went to work for an insurance company, had great sales training. So he leads up the sales. Ashley Powell, another ex-general manager, director of operations of a restaurant. She runs the support team. And then we have, Ashley's got, I think, 9 or 10 people under her. We've got 10 salespeople. I've got 6 different developers. So we're constantly changing. We've got it to the point now, Andy, where we import the sales from the point of sale system. We import the front of the house and back of the house labor. Because all the salaries are built in the back end, we calculate the workman's comp, the payroll taxes. So you're getting a true labor figure every day compared to your budget. Then if you're, we have the white label deal with Cisco Foods. So if you're a Cisco Foods user or client, when the invoice goes to the restaurant, it comes to the EDI to Fobesoft, and all that parses right to the cell, the food, any other kitchen supplies, etc. Now, if you're not a Cisco person, all you do is take a picture of the invoice or upload it on the computer. It goes to the cloud and parses right to the cell. So we're giving you a full profit and loss statement every single day compared to your budget, running month to date, and you basically don't have to touch anything. All you're doing is taking pictures of some invoices, and if you're a Cisco customer, buy most of your stuff from Cisco, we have the EDI that comes straight in, and it's basically seamless now. And that's the team. I mean, when I first built this, you had to do some entry. It still only took 5 or 10 minutes a day, but it's hard to get 5 or 10 minutes a day out of a restaurateur these days.
Yeah, that's true. And of course, you mentioned the word seamless. Really, when I think about Fobesoft, that's really the remarkable sort of unique selling proposition that you have, is that it's a seamless integration. You mentioned POS. There's a number of different POS systems out there for restaurants. Let's talk about the integration and how that works through your system.
Well, I mean, basically, most of the point of sale systems, you have your food, beer, wine, liquor sales that go in. Now we integrate so that those come straight over when the manager or whomever closes at the end of the night, shuts the point of sale system down. That information comes straight to Fobesoft. And most of them are using their point of sale system as a time clock also. So all the servers are back of the house, cooks, etc., use it as a time clock. So the front of the house labor and the back of the house labor comes over also. And that's pretty much all the information we need, because we know what their credit card discount fees are. I mean, we have all this other information built into the budget, which automatically populates the cell and the daily sales. So it's basically seamless. And there might be a few point of sale systems that we aren't integrated with. And in that case, we have an entry assistant that at night, we have the login credentials to some of the point of sale systems. We have a person from our team go in, grab that information, put it into Fobesoft. So when the person wakes up in the morning, they've got their full P&L.
Wow. It's interesting, Geordy, because if you look at it from the standpoint of an entrepreneur, let's say they're a chef and now they have an idea that they want to open a restaurant. And now they open the restaurant, you know, it starts trickling in, and then all of a sudden they get a good name and more money starts trickling in. And then they start growing. What dollar volume typically does this chef who's now a restaurateur start thinking about the fact they need to bring in some management, they need to bring in some additional software to help them? In the restaurant industry, where does this solo entrepreneur who was a chef that now becomes a restaurateur, who now becomes a successful restaurateur, start bringing in management and other layers to help them in the business?
Well, it depends. It's all different. It's across the board. Typically you have a front of the house guy and a back of the house guy, or front of the house woman and back of the house. However, you know, it typically is divided that way. We see more chefs in the front of the house now. So I think the point that you need to bring somebody in is you need to, one of the main points is you need someone that's paying attention to the financials. And depending on who you find, there's a myth that I love hearing this. I mean, I've heard it my whole career. I mean, I've opened well over 30 restaurants. I owned and operated restaurants in San Francisco for almost 20 years. But well, you know, restaurants don't make money for the first year, which is the biggest bunch of you know what ever, because that's when you should make money. That's when you're going to get an opportunity at everybody. You need to open and be ready to go from day one, because what happens is these restaurants, you open up and you're busy, and you're buying and this and that. Nobody's paying attention to it. And you look at after the first month's closed, you probably don't have a P&L until the next, 3 or 4 weeks after, if you have an accomplished bookkeeper. And you're like, oh my God, we lost a lot of money. Now, that's the reason I say these things, is because they're not organized. They don't have a person that's staying on top of the financials. It's a business, and it's a business with a lot of moving parts. That's what people don't understand, is you have to pay attention to each one of those little moving parts. You need to know who's spending the money and where they're spending it. And then you have the opportunity to, and it's not just a matter of the volume. I mean, you have to be making enough bottom line to have the right people in the front of the house and the back of the house, et cetera.
Yeah, it makes sense, Geordy. Of course, you've opened some of the most iconic restaurants in the United States, in San Francisco, and we've talked about that prior to the interview. What was the aha moment, Geordy? I mean, here you are. I mean, you know restaurants inside and out. Your team knows restaurants. You know the hospitality industry. What was your aha moment when you said to yourself, there has to be a better way. We have to have a software that can do what Fobesoft now has become, which is, the #1 restaurant management software. What was the aha moment for you to start developing this amazing platform?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I operated this way my own career. I learned a way to do this years ago with a piece of paper, a pencil, a piece of graph paper, a pencil, and a calculator. And that's the way I would operate. Once a week, I'd sit down with my management team and say, you've spent X amount of money here. Don't buy any more liquor for the rest of the month. I don't care if the guy comes in, gives you a 100-case discount on all this wine or what have you. Let's just, watch how we're spending the money, et cetera. And when I sold my restaurants in San Francisco and moved back to Palm Beach, Florida, where I grew up here, but moved back here to raise our kids. I'm a cyclist, and I was riding my bike one day, and I had friends from the Bay Area call me, say, would you look at my numbers? I'm getting ready to open a restaurant. Could you help me do this? What do you think about that? Would you do a budget for me? And I was riding my bike one day, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do this. So I went into my office that day. I have a small company called Cypress Hospitality Group. So we're headhunters for the hospitality industry. So I went in my office that day and I started making phone calls. And that's when I found a person who knew Raj. And Raj and I got together and I explained to Raj what I wanted to do. And that's when we started building it. And then it's interesting because there's a lot of naysayers out there. And when I would talk to somebody, they'd say, oh, there's a ton of stuff out there like this. The restaurant industry has all this stuff. And I'll say this, when the Angel Fund came, and that's what one of the main partners of the angel fund thought. He says, well, there's got to be a ton of stuff like this out there for restaurants. So he put it in front of a person that had invested with them before. He's an ex-CFO of one of the largest restaurant companies in the world. And when the ex-CFO of one of the largest restaurant companies in the world saw Fobesoft, he said, not only does the industry need this, I want to invest. And he's one of our larger investors. That, kind of gave me some what's the word?
Validation. Great validation
on what I've done. And still to this day, you speak to people and say, oh, there's a bunch of stuff like that. Well, there's not. There's a few different good accounting packages out there, and you have to have a bookkeeper or an accountant that uses them. And there's a couple really good ones, but they're not giving you a P&L every single day. They don't have a team that's telling you, if your credit card fees are high, or if your restaurant insurance is high, or if your labor's high, how to get these expenses down. That's one of the things that my team does. And also, someone could quit on Friday, and by a new person starts on Monday, we could have that person trained to use Fobesoft before lunch is over. I mean, a couple hours is all it takes, because we've made it very user-friendly.
Yeah, I love it. Manage to the bottom line. That's what it's all about. Really interesting. I mean, there you were on a bike, and you said to yourself, here we go. I mean, and now you've got one of the most important people in the restaurant industry that's invested, and you've got people all over talking about it. One thing that, really comes clear with what you're doing, Geordy, is you understand the restaurant business. You're looking at this not only as a technologist and a numbers person, but also as a restaurant person. And I would imagine that the restaurateurs are really excited that they have someone that's running Fobesoft that really understands the restaurant business, right?
Well, I would think so. I mean, a lot of the other packages were built by accountants or built by tech and accounting together that don't necessarily get the restaurant industry. There's no secret that the restaurant industry runs on QuickBooks. We're fully integrated with QuickBooks. So you can run off Fobesoft and push what information you want to QuickBooks. But one of the things QuickBooks does not do is it does not calculate your cost of goods the way it should be calculated correctly. It calculates your cost of goods like a manufacturing company. So everything is calculated off your total sales, whereas your food sales calculated, your food purchase should be calculated off your food sales, wine off wine, beer off beer, and merchandise off. But then the whole thing should be your whole cost of goods is calculated on your total sales. But we've had clients where I had a woman say, I'm running a 26% food cost. Well, she was when it was calculated off the total sales. But when you calculated it off the food sales, she was running almost a 40% food cost, which, we helped her get it down 4 points to 36 almost immediately. And another thing that it's doing is it's giving you, like a chef can go in on a Monday and go forward on the budget and know, I've got this much money to spend this week on food. I've got this much money to spend for scheduling in the back of the house, just like the person in the front of the house can. So it's giving you this information that otherwise you're just flying by the seat of your pants.
Geordy, that's interesting. Now, one thing that you've been able to do also is to add an additional language to the Fobesoft platform. So let's talk about that, because that's fascinating. I could see you adding more languages as time goes on, and this being an international phenomenon.
Yeah, well, the Latino market is one of the largest growing markets in the country. So what we did is the whole platform is translated into Spanish with one toggle of the switch up top right corner, English or Spanish. So you can enter the information in Spanish at night. You can get up in the morning and click the button and look at it in English in the morning, vice versa, or whatever. So, and that's really helped our growth also.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Before I let you go, I know you've only cut out a certain amount of time. You're helping so many people. I mean, you mentioned a 40% close rate. You show it to restaurants, 40% of them sign up on the spot. I mean, that's fantastic. Let's talk about entrepreneurship, because we have some younger entrepreneurs watching the show. Maybe they're hitting a wall, maybe having a tough time, Geordy. Maybe they just freeze in the frame because they've never been through it. Could you share some good advice to the younger entrepreneurs watching the show about what it takes to keep on pushing through a tough time as an entrepreneur, Geordy?
I would say that you really have to believe in what you're doing, and you really have to know that what you're doing is going. There's something. It's going to work, and that's hard to say. But I mean, it was Steve Jobs that said, if you can identify and solve that problem, you have an opportunity. But that's all you have is an opportunity. Now, you need to take that opportunity and keep pushing through to make sure, and you have to get the right people, surround yourself with the right people also. There's so many people out there that, bang their chests and I'm the king of the world, and I'm going to do this or whatever. I mean, I look for help all the time because, I'm a restaurant guy and now I am in, a software business. I've never been in a software business. So I'm getting help all around me, and I'm not shy about asking for it. And that's something that I think some of the younger entrepreneurs also need to do, and talk to as many people as you can, because there is a wealth of help out there for people that have an opportunity to make it in this industry.
Yeah, I love it, Geordy. Before I let you go, I have a sidewinder question for you. You're on a desert island, and you only have one type of food that you can eat on the desert island. What would be the type of food that you would want to have on that desert island with you?
Well, of course, a desert island, I'd be fishing. I'd be eating.
There you
I'd be
go.
Grilling it or eating sushi. I don't know.
The Mediterranean diet, I guess, right? That's great. Listen, Geordy, it's great to have you on the show, sharing with us what you're doing at Fobesoft. I know you have a lot of new things that are coming on tap and on board at the company. When you have those on and you release them, I'm going to bring you back on the show because this is very exciting. I could definitely see as you continue to improve and continue to collect the data, improving the KPIs, that that 40% close rate is probably going to go to 100%, and you're going to be everywhere. And I know that you probably have some national and international goals as well, and we look forward to seeing and hearing about all of that, Geordy. But this has been fantastic and a real honor to have you on the show today. And thanks so much for coming on the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Thank you, Andy. It was a pleasure. I look forward to doing it again.